Elio, right?
Yes.
All right. So, Elio's 8 years old.
We're not really sure. We adopted him about a year and a half ago,
Okay.
and they said he was like 7-ish at that time, but he seems very youthful.
Yeah.
I think he might be more like 5 or 6 or something, but
Yeah. I don't. I remember. 'Cause I think I read somewhere. Maybe it was the facility form or something. And I was like, I saw him. I was like, he doesn't look 8. Like he looks like
yeah.
2 to 4ish maybe to me. But okay. And then what are you trying to achieve with Elio?
So I want him to have the best quality of life that he could possibly have.
Okay.
I want to have I want to feel less anxiety when we're out in the world.
Okay.
I take like being responsible with his like care and interacting with the world really seriously. So if anything, I've sort of erred on the side of caution.
Yeah.
And so would love, but like would love, I know he would love, and I would love to do with him, like the ability to have like a great, calm, peaceful walk, the ability to play off leash, have that kind of control. I'm familiar with all of y'all's methods, obviously, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm actually like excited to embark on that stuff. I just haven't wanted to get too far through any of that on my own and accidentally mess something up. I need a real expert. I need a real expert to help me, basically. But yeah, he's very good and calm indoors. Do a lot of like some like implied stay stuff and threshold stuff that kind of just within like what I've picked up kind of from watching you guys, stuff like that. But would just like for him to be like well-rounded, confident. He has a little bit of reactivity to other dogs when we're out on a leash. I haven't been able to tell. I'm sure you'll like ask me some questions and we'll get all into it, but haven't really been able to tell, how much of that's like provoked either by him or if it's just I don't know. I know you'll tell me. But it's not like a real problem. It's not bad, but it does cause me stress, and I don't want something bad to happen from it or come from it.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but he mostly gets along, I think, fine with other dogs in like settings that are controlled for and like the kinds of intentional environments you guys create. But we don't like do dog parks or any of that stuff for lots of reasons. But some of it's all just like we've been getting to know him for a year and trying to like, get a sense of what his triggers are and just his personality and let him settle in. And now I think it's like we're in a great place to, take the next step and like elevate his life and what we're able to do with him and, living in a city, what that means. And yeah, so that's kind of it.
Okay. Oh, that's good information. I like that you took a year. It's either start soon, right? Or fill your dog out. Learn about your dog. Because a lot changes over that year. It usually takes dogs 2 weeks to a month-ish to kind of start displaying their true selves. So like someone might get a dog and, they're super sweet. And then after a month, they're like attacking everyone but one person within the home. So obviously that needs to be addressed more quickly right away. Other times it's just like, well, what is your dog about? What's their personality? What's their temperament? All that stuff. And a year is a good amount of time to kind of get that relationship going. In terms of the reactivity, I think Elio's walked on the flat collar. Is that correct? Or is he on a prong or harness?
He's on a prong collar, and it really improved his pulling like immediately. But I would say that like I know that there are ways to be corrective with it that are more intentional, and so like that's a skill set I'm looking to acquire because he still pulls a little bit. He doesn't heel. I haven't trained him to heel, so he doesn't know. But yeah, so prong.
Okay. When you've seen the reactivity, was this something that you saw since the beginning, or is this something that kind of gradually happened over the time that you've had them?
I'd say it's been about the same amount. But at first he didn't really display it because he was, he had never lived in a city environment at all. So he was like and he had lived with other dogs, but like out literally on like a farm or something.
Sure.
So I think as he got a little more comfortable navigating an urban environment, we saw some of those instances. I don't think it's increased over time. Like I think it's plateaued.
Okay.
I don't see it hasn't been any worse in recent months since it appeared, really.
Okay. When he becomes reactive, what are you doing in the meantime or now to manage it?
No, usually I'll notice like he notices something and his ears go erect and he kind of just like and usually if I kind of like I can like snap or like click my tongue or something and he'll like stop and like turn and look back or whatever. Sometimes if I didn't catch it early enough, like he'll and other times too, like sometimes like I don't know, I guess he's just especially offended by whatever dog or person or it's always a dog, it's never a person. A person with a dog sometimes, and it's not super aggressive, like he'll just kind of growl and kind of like pull and we've been snuck up on a bunch of times just walking a dog down the street, and then like there's a couple dogs in yards that like just come up out of nowhere and they're like guns blazing, pissed off, and like that we've had those kinds of interactions that were like aggressive and like a scruffle through a fence. But I can usually get him to just like come away after I can like snap him out of paying attention to it by like usually verbally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outside of like what we do here with him at the daycare, because I don't think anyone's noted any issues with him. Do you socialize him with friends' dogs or anything like that? Or is it just his socialization is just here?
Just there.
Okay. Have you ever attempted to, or have you been kind of wary of it because of the reactivity?
Yeah, one time, but the other dog initiated got mad and whatever, and it wasn't a good experience. But no, we really we don't have any friends with other dogs. And like I said, like I'm not, even though we live right by this dog park over here in Logan Square.
Oh, sure.
It's so small and it just doesn't seem like a good fit. But once we're like more confident about being out in I think like an unleashed environment, like we really do want to like go out to some of these other like much bigger space parks and stuff like that. So that's something in the vision.
Okay. Now, let's say like with the training, without like, because people tend to limit themselves because they think it's not possible. But I'm like, well, with the way that we train, like it's possible. So if you could have what you wanted with Elio and like live the life that you want to live with him, what would you do with him?
We would I think go out to the forest preserves a good bit. Something we used to like to do before. And if it's possible, I mean, we'd love to be able to like have him hang out, I don't know, on a patio for beers and stuff where other dogs are around and that kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe even some other stuff like I think he would maybe like enjoy like scent work stuff, like some of that kind of like recreationally or whatever. Those kinds of activities. I don't know. I don't know what the horizon, like what is possible, but some of that basic stuff for sure. Being outdoors mostly.
So I'll give you an examples of like the average family pet is there's like I walk my dog and they go to the dog park or they go to the park, right? Or I walk my dog, we go to the park and we go to restaurants, or we do all that stuff. Plus we're going to go hiking at forest preserves We're going to go to the dog beach. You know, we're going to go to patios. We're going to go to beer gardens. We're going to do all this stuff, right? Because that kind of determines length of time. Is just how much control you're looking to have. Because the only command that needs to be off-leash reliable is the recall. Okay, because that's the most important command. And if it's not off-leash reliable, it's pointless. Because if he's running towards the street, if he's chasing a squirrel, if he's running towards something dangerous, we're going to need him to return immediately. So in any one of my programs that covers recall, I give the tools to get that to be that reliable. You just have to practice. Okay. And then everything else is just kind of like as needed. So the reactivity stuff, the way I would approach this is the first thing that we always teach to address reactivity is the heel command. And you mentioned yourself, like he doesn't have a formal heel. You have him on a prong collar, which is alleviated pulling, but he still doesn't have a task at hand, right? So the theory with heel is if he's more concerned with you, he's not going to be concerned with the dog in passing. Okay. And I make like your left leg, because that's where we teach heel, like the center of his universe. Okay. Now, theoretically, if he respects the heel, we shouldn't see reactivity, but sometimes it still happens. So if that's the case, then all that means is the way we were going to approach it didn't work like we wanted it to. Now we have to provide consequence or correct for the behavior itself to teach Elio that this is not allowed. Okay. But we always have to base everything off of the heel because that becomes his reference point. When I feel pressure, I return to my owner's left side and I stop barking or lunging or whatever it is he's doing. Okay. Now, there's certain things that are normal. Doesn't mean that we can't disagree. So like if I'm walking with Elio and a dog lunged and barked at him and he lunged and barked back, like I get that, right? Because it's like if you're walking on the sidewalk and someone just starts yelling and swearing at you, you might get defensive back, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, but we can also teach them like no need to respond to that. And we just, we teach them to ignore it and we keep going. The dogs barking behind fences when they kind of charge up on you out of nowhere, that does tend to take longer to overcome because you can't plan for when a dog is going to charge from behind the fence, but it's definitely something that can be addressed as well. Okay. So I don't think we're going to have a big problem with the reactivity. Okay.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
From what I've seen with him, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. Heel is typically 2 classes. We teach the first half and I give you your homework and I might tell you to confront reactivity or I might tell you to ignore it. Okay. Depending on how Elio responds the first class. Come to second class, I'll ask you like how to go, less reactivity, were you able to stop it, blah, 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 blah. And then however you answer that kind of dictates how the second half goes because the second class is the second half of heel and then we make a couple of tweaks. Okay. Then you come back to third class. Okay. If everything is going beautifully and it's working really well, then we typically jump into recall. Okay. Because heel tends to be the first thing that, the fastest thing that we teach because we walk our dogs at least 3 times a day. So that gives you 3 opportunities to practice heel training. Recall requires you to go somewhere, right? You got to go to the park, you got to put them on the long leash, you got to have squirrels or rabbits or distractions or whatever going on in order to practice your recall to make it applicable no matter the context. So that's going to take more time. Okay. So if you did 6 classes, don't expect for the recall to be done at the end of 6. You're just going to have all the information and you got to practice that, right? Because if you go once a week, it's going to take you a long time to get to that point. But if you go once every day, you're going to get there much more quickly. But then you also have to account for the environments that you practice in. If you always practice at the same park that's always empty, he's going to be great there. Then when you go to a forest preserve where there's like more distractions and stuff, it's not going to be as good. Okay. So I give you all the information and then it's your job to then go out and practice and find locations to practice. Okay. So heel is the fastest, recall is the longest. And that tends to be 2 classes in itself as well for the recall. Okay. Now, those two commands will allow you to do a lot of stuff with Elio, because heel allows you to walk with your dog without pulling, allows us to address reactivity so we don't get lunging and barking. And then recall, of course, allows you to be able to have your dog off leash even in an unenclosed environment, because you're not worried about, is my dog going to run away? Okay. So typically when dogs run away from their owners, it's because there's been no boundaries put in place. Okay. The e-collar itself will do a lot of that work on its own. So like after we've trained dogs, like let's say they have like a moderate prey drive and they see a squirrel like 40 feet away, prior to training, they may just take off to chase a squirrel, but after having discipline, they're not as impulsive. Okay. Now, if I have a high prey drive dog, that's a bit different because every little thing is on the radar and it requires more management on the owner's part, but they can still control their dog. Okay. And you would learn as you work with Elio, and you'd be like, yeah, we passed by a bunch of geese and birds and whatever, and he was just completely like oblivious to them. I'm like, good. Like he's knowing that, okay, there's rules, but then if I say break, he can go and chase a squirrel. Like I don't care, he's a dog. That's what he's put on this earth to do. So
Sure.
Heel and recall, two most important things. Everything after that is superficial in the sense of like, well, how much control do you need? Okay. So there's 6 foundational family pet commands that are meant to be functional: heel, recall, sit, down, place, and stay. Okay. In training, we have what I call the trifecta: walk with me, don't pull, come when I call you, and don't go here, don't move. Okay. So if you want
what was that third one?
A go here, don't move, or go there, don't move.
Okay.
Yeah, like go to bed or something. So with those 3 commands, like you can do a lot of stuff with your dog. Okay. If you're wanting like the whole 9 yards, then we go into the down, the sit, the stay, half of it. But typically it's heel, recall, and place command, because 2 are essential, and then the duration aspect of or like the don't move one, place is the easiest to teach. Okay. Down requires a bit more work because he has to go into a laying down position, whereas with place it's just go to this bed and don't leave until I give you permission. So it's easier to teach. Okay. So that's really just personal preference. If Elio was progressing and you're doing your homework, and following through and everything, and the reactivity isn't a big problem, like I don't think it's going to be, right? Is with 6 classes you could achieve the heel, the recall, and the don't move, and essentially have the trifecta. Heel and place don't have to be off leash reliable, but recall does. Okay. So you would have that information, and then it's just practice until you get to that point, and then you're good. If you did 9 or 12 weeks, we would just cover more ground in terms of commands. And then if you did 12, we're kind of pushing all the commands to be off leash reliable. Okay. So meaning like if he's in a down and I'm 20, 30 feet away, he's not going to move. Right. And he could stay there for 2 hours. Heel is walking at your side off leash, no matter what the environment is. So if you're going hiking through a forest preserve and he sees a deer and you have him off leash, you would call him and then pop him in the heel as you pass by that distraction. And once you passed it and we're clear, okay, break, and then he can be loose and be free again. Okay. So it's, again, just personal preference. So you have options. You can do 6, 9, or 12. Questions?
Yeah, I mean, if he already has a somewhat decent basis of sitting down, but not place, and certainly not duration with it. Like, I mean, some things that like we've gone through, like I'll like feed him and then like have him just wait for a few minutes and then give him a break and he'll get it, like that kind of thing. And I honestly don't even know how I taught him some of these things. Like he just kind of like, I will like physically imply it and he just sort of does it, but like it's not like formal. I don't know, maybe that is formal. I don't guess not. But so based on that, which sounds like those are kind of like some of those things in the 9 class like range, what do you sort of like, what do you recommend? Or do you,
No.
do you need more information from me to make a recommendation, I guess?
So when we talk about formal, and when I tell people like teaching a formal down,
Mhm.
a formal down is if you took your dog to your friend's house, to Home Depot, to PetSmart, to Starbucks, and you said down, he'll lay down and not move for whatever period of time you need him to not move for. Okay. And I think now obedience is now being looked at as more of tricks that dogs do.
Yeah.
And if you have food and you're in the house, it's a fun thing to do with your dog. And I'm not saying that it's not fun, but those 6 commands are meant to be functional. You know, they're meant to allow you to live your life and do whatever you want with your dog. That's what they're meant for, despite no matter what the environment is. I don't care if there's deer, raccoons, squirrels, other dogs, people, a parade, like they're meant to have control over your dog no matter what the context is, right? So you have like the average dog owner where it's like my dog waits for their food in the hole to sit or something, or if I tell them down, they'll down, and they might down for like a minute or two, but then they pop up, right? And I'm wanting down, and then I can like walk away and then come back, and he's not going to move for 2 hours or whatever. Okay, that's me. Now, so then to determine what length you need, this is where you kind of look at that. Like when I asked her, I'm like, what does your life look like with Elio if you could have whatever you wanted, right? So when I hear forest preserves, or if like you were to say like, yeah, we would go hiking with him and we would go like on a 4-hour hike and stuff, I'm like, well, that's where we're needing off-leash stuff, right?
Yeah.
If it's forest preserves, like the ones like in the suburbs or whatever, you would still be good with, in my opinion, the 6 class range. Okay. If you're wanting to have all 6 commands and they're not going to be off-leash reliable, then you're good with the 9. But if you want all 6 commands and all of them off-leash reliable, then we're in the 12 range. Okay, because it's really just personal preference. Recall is the only command that has to be off-leash reliable. Okay, and in the city of Chicago, just so you know, there of course are leash laws, right? Now, a lot of my clients, when they train their dogs to be off leash, they walk their dogs off leash because they're able to, and they'll glue to their hip. But they're also responsible, and they're not like letting their dog run up to people and stuff like that. They have what I call off-leash etiquette. So even though they're doing things that are against the law, they have control over their dogs, and they're not putting themselves in situations like where someone's off-leash dog runs up to your dog. And they're like, oh, it's okay, he's friendly, like blah 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 blah. And it's like, get your fucking dog, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's really just personal preference. It's really, do you really want the 6 commands, and do you really need the 6 commands? That's where you would think like, where would I use down? Because so down and place are kind of interchangeable. Place is go here, don't move, and it's more lenient because if Elio's on an object, he can sit, stand, or lay down. He just cannot step off of the object. Okay, so it's an easier duration command to teach for people because it's less work on them. The down command is very strict. It's lay down and don't move. So he cannot sit, he cannot stand. He has to stay in that down position. So that requires a little bit more work. Okay. So if you were to go somewhere and not have an object to use as place, then we would resort to down, right? But if you always carry like a towel with you, you always have a place with you technically. You can even pop down your jacket and use it as place. Like I've done that before. We just need someone that has something that has a perimeter. Okay. So it's really just that personal preference of like, do I really need all those commands, and would I use all those commands?
Gotcha. Okay.
Other questions?
That was helpful. Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't think so. I'm a little torn. Do folks like do the 6 with you and then decide like this is so great, like we want to build on this and do more classes after that, or do you recommend kind of like when you've got them in the zone and you've got them in this regimen of classes and stuff to just do it all?
So I've had people do 6 and then like let's say they did 6 in the fall and they were going to do 12, is they did 6 in the fall and then winter came and they're going to just do their thing during the winter, and they come the spring, they're going to do the last 6, right? So it gives them plenty of time to like work on stuff.
Yeah.
The only issue is, so like they would commit to 12 already, right? And they would do 6 and say, Jesse, we're going to take a break so we can practice, and we're going to do the second 6, right?
Yeah.
Because if you do 6, it does happen where people go like, man, we didn't think it was going to be this easy or this good. And they go, yeah. And they're like, we want to do more. Is if you did 6, I think the cost is like $950, if I'm remembering that correctly. Okay. If you did 6 and then decided to do another 6, you would pay another $950.
Gotcha.
Okay. We don't prorate anymore. We used to prorate, but then COVID happened and then my business lost a ton of money. And now it's like, well, I got to recuperate, right?
Hey, I get you.
So,
yeah, totally.
I'm sorry?
Totally. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
If you commit the 12 up front, it's, I believe, $1,675. So you save 100 and something or so dollars, I believe. I personally don't care what you do, but that's just how we do that now. And you could do 6 and then take space and then come back and say, hey, Jesse, this is how much I've done. And you can do the last 6 and we take you even further. Because typically how the program is split up is if I know you're doing 12, the first 6 classes, we teach the 6 commands: sit, stay down, come, place, heel. And we teach them all on the short leash. And then the last 6, we start transitioning everything to the long leash, okay, to start building towards off-leash reliability. So some clients will do the first chunk, practice, 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 and then come back, and then we do even more stuff. Because training can get a little bit more complex depending on how much control or how well trained you want Elio to be, right? So then we start delving into what we call the emergency commands, which is like emergency sits or emergency downs. And what an emergency down is, no matter what Elio is doing, whether he's chasing something or running towards you or running around or playing, if you said down, he would just plop it. Okay. So where that command comes into play is like if Elio were to be across the street from you, you wouldn't want to use recall, right? Down. You have to plop them, right? So, but that takes more time to teach. So a lot of clients will do the first chunk and they get a lot of stuff done. And then the second half, we start teaching more advanced concepts, but then also teaching things to be off-leash reliable, okay? Because it all comes, it's all about time. Life's going to happen if you got work or, your life or your social life or anything like that. It's going to impede on the training at some point. So typically, if they don't stop in the middle and do the second half, usually by class 9, we start breaking up the last 3 classes. So I have 2 or 3 clients now that did 12-week programs. And once they hit class 9, I said, now just go practice, make a lot of mistakes, fix what you can, and then come back when you're ready. So then I won't see them for like a month. Then they'll have their 10th class. What are we having problems? Okay, tweak here, tweak here, tweak here. Go make some more mistakes, right? So by the time they hit their 12th class, like we've covered a ton of ground because you need more time to, do things and figure out trouble areas and stuff where you're having problems. If you're doing simply 6 classes, it's pretty much in succession. And then it's, practice and, let me know if you need anything type of deal. Okay.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and I think it may make sense for us to kind of like break it up in some way like that. Because I mean, in the winter, we've been hitting the park, like we do a long line. We wait until basically no one's there. It's fenced in and, he can just have a ball or whatever. But, we're not doing that more than once a week right now because it's just
really cold.
It's really freaking cold, yeah. So if we can sort of split up and do the first 6 or so now even in the winter, and then hit the next half of it in the rest when the season's better for actually getting out there and practicing more. I think that would be doable for us. And I mean, when you're talking about like this emergency stay stuff, like for me, or emergency down, like I think I do want that because like I know I'm way more keyed up while we're out there than he is about like just things happening. Like, I don't know, people are jerks and lots of dogs are wild out here, and like, you know.
You're correct. And that's the stuff that people don't account for is, you know, when we train dogs and you know, because we do remote collar, and that's the reason why we get flack from like the positive only, and they're starting to creep up and like comment on our stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
I tell them like, I train for when shit happens that I still have or can get and achieve control, right? Because I've had dogs run away because of fireworks. I've had dogs be charged by off-leash dogs. I've had fights where, you know, one dog and another dog go after a ball at the same time. I had a client whose dog got in confrontation with a coyote. You know, just like the craziest stuff, right?
Yeah.
And remote collar is the one tool that's going to guarantee me and my clients as close to 100% as you can get, right? So, and it's kind of like, I hope it never happens, but in case it does, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you know emergency down is something that you would want Elio to do, what I would suggest starting now is with food, just revisit the downs with food. Okay. Because it's going to give you a head start. So by the time we get to that point, because we'll lay a remote and all that stuff over it, is you'll be steps ahead. Okay. So like I had a client, it was her dad. I trained the couple's dog, and then I trained her dad's dog.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did the consultation with them, so he was living in Winnetka. I drove out to Winnetka, you know, and I ring the doorbell, and this old guy opens the door, and then he goes, "Can you teach my dog to lay down no matter what, whether he's playing or running, no matter what?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you're hired." Okay. Because where he lived in Winnetka, his neighbor had a dog across the street. It was a golden doodle, and he had a schnauzer, and they would run across the street zooming and playing. And he says, "I can't call my dog if he's at my neighbor's yard. I need him to lay down like that." I said,
Yeah.
"Sure." So because I knew that he needed that, day one, we started working on the downs. So by the time we hit the 9th class or so, boom, dog was dropping on a dime. Okay.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I would suggest you start that now, you know, 3 to 5 minutes a day, just practicing down, feeding them and all that stuff. And then eventually I'm going to come in, you'll keep practicing it, and then we'll build it to that degree. Okay. Other questions?
What I'm guessing we'll need an e-collar.
Correct.
And yeah, so I'm curious about which, I mean, I know Dogtra is the brand that you guys highly recommend, so I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm.
Which model do you think will
how much does Elio weigh?
42 pounds.
42. Okay. So you technically have two options.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Dogtra 2300 NCP, which is meant for 70 pounds and under. And then the Dogtra Black Edition, which is meant for 70 pounds and over. Okay. The reason why I recommend the Black Edition is just because, one, it's more sleek. It's a curved collar, so it tucks nicely. But also because Elio is a longer, thicker coated breed, is having more output to kind of compensate for that. Because you want to factor in a few things. One, he's a 42-pound dog, which, you know, decent sized dog. So longer coat. Dogs are physical animals, so they're used to being bitten, you know. And then lastly, in case of an emergency, we're going to have to account for stress levels, right? Is he scared running away from a firework? Is he anxious or nervous for whatever reason? That we have to override all those things, right? Mm-hmm. And having the higher powered collar, because it means it has a higher output, sure. Which means for standard training, we would just have a lower number. But then if an emergency kind of crops up, I'm not so much worried about, am I going to have enough power to override Elio? Okay. So they're technically, he's technically good for both, because he's a good, 28 pounds under the 70-pound limit. But the 2300 is a box. So if you care about aesthetic, then, Black Edition is nice. Mm-hmm. And if you also just kind of not have to worry about what if, then the Black Edition is better because you're going to have the most output.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they're not that far off in cost. I think the Dogtra 2300 is around 287-ish with tax. And I believe the Black Edition is like 325-ish with tax. So for like 40 to 50 bucks more, you're getting just a bit more reassurance.
Sure. Okay.
They're both fully waterproof systems, 3/4 to 1 mile range, depending on the environment. So plenty of range for the average family pet. And they last for years. I've had mine for 8 years. The most common issues that I see is that it is a rechargeable lithium battery. So after 2 to 3 years, and after charging and charging and charging, the battery might die. You just go to Dogtra, you look at the website, find the battery that you need, you order it, open it up, replace it, and you should be good to go.
Sure. Okay.
Other questions?
I don't think so. Is there something you think I should be asking that I haven't?
A couple of things. One, you already touched upon it, weather.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now, after this week or so, it's going to be cold, obviously, but not as cold.
Yeah.
Is that, heel and recall, of course, is stuff that's practiced outside. So you do want to keep in mind that, I know right now you said you're going once a week. So just factor that in, right? Is, are you going to be working outside? Because then that's how you're going to get the most out of your program, is that you learn what you're going to learn, you go home and you practice during the week, and you come back after a week and we build upon what you learn. So if you're only going out, for like 10 minutes a day, or, real quick in and outs, you're not going to learn much, right? The other thing is, a lot of people ask, when does the e-collar go away? Right? And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't, which means when you're out with Elio in the world, at the Forest Preserve, at the Logan Square Boulevard or whatever, and he's off leash, in case something happens, you have a means of control, right? So my pit hates fireworks, and she gets really anxious and very flighty. And during this last year, August, October, it happened to me twice, where I was walking along the boulevard, and I got over to like California, where the train station is, and somebody set off a firework twice on different occasions. And I didn't have an e-collar on my dogs because they weren't going to be off leash. We were just going for a walk. And my pit got stressed. She went into flight mode. She got very anxious, and she's like, scattering all over the place. And I'm pissed off because I'm like, why would you do that in August? And then also I was pissed off at myself because I was like, this is why I tell people just put the collar on when they walk their dogs, right? Because you can't account for stuff like that, So if he's a great dog inside the house, if he's a great dog everywhere else, you don't need it. But if it's like we're going to be at a restaurant, we're going to be off leash anywhere, we're going to be going for a walk or anything like that, we don't know when there's going to be a dog behind a fence. We don't know if we're going to get charged by an off leash dog, firework. All these components is that it's present in case something happens. But if you've done your homework, you're not always using it, right? So we're conditioned. Okay. So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. Okay. Do you drive?
Yes.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yeah.
Do you go the speed limit?
Right. Sometimes. Yeah.
Most people don't go the speed limit, right? Yeah. Sure. But if you see a squad car, what happens?
Oh yeah, slow down.
Because now there's sort of consequence.
Okay, right? Get it. Yeah.
So think of that as the e-collar. It's a cop on a collar. When it's present, he knows he's got to heel, he's got to sit, blah, 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 right? But when it's not present, he's going to push things, okay? So it has nothing to do with the training. It's called opportunistic behavior. Humans do it. All animals do it, okay? It's part of the survival instinct. So, but yeah, as long as you're doing the homework and you follow through with everything that I give you, the use of it becomes minimal. And it's kind of like, in case something happens, I know I have a means of regaining control.
Gotcha. Okay.
Other than that, there's nothing else that, I think you should know. Like, you're already aware of how we train. And it seems kind of like your line of thinking is on par with how we approach training, right? A lot of stuff that we can't account for, and we want to be able to regain control if needed. So really, it's just factoring in, it's cold as shit right now.
Yeah. And then, so like, I guess the other factor, but I think I watched a video on Instagram that you did about this. So I think I have a pretty good sense of this, but like, so my partner, Rachel, she's a little bit more of the good cop, more the bad cop. And I mean, we're both, invested in his well-being and everything, but I just think like there are some elements of this stuff that like she's probably not going to be putting into practice, but it seems like that is okay. Like that's not
Right. So
a
like
problem.
what would happen is Elio would be spot on with you, not so
Mhm.
spot on with her.
Okay.
Right. And the example I give is like with me growing up, when I was with my grandma, she would let me get away with stuff. And then if I was with my mom and my grandma would override my mom. So I would push for more stuff. Right. But if I was only with my mom, I was on my best behavior.
Got it.
So
Okay.
the only times where we see this becoming a problem is if like the other person or outside family is overriding the owner who's doing the training, and then the owner then also kind of just steps back. Then the
Okay.
dog learns these patterns, right? But then when it's just you and Elio, he's going to be great because
Got
you're
it.
able to discipline him at the level that he needs without being inhibited by others. But
Gotcha.
otherwise, uh, I get clients who have dog walkers who don't reinforce the training, or like they let their dog stay with a family member who doesn't reinforce training, and it doesn't impact their training because it's associated to them.
Got it.
Now, would it be great if everybody was on the same page? Absolutely. Makes things really nice, So that's why with my daycare, a lot of our dogs that come here were trained by us. And we reinforce the training so that when the owners pick up their dogs, they're not really, there's no regression in the sense of like the dog's just like, I got away with things all day. Like we're reinforcing the discipline so then they get the dogs just how they're doing at home,
Gotcha. And that does kind of remind me of a question I've had before. What are some of the like the elements during daycare for the dogs that you guys have trained that like we could opt into to help? I mean, kind of keep reinforcing it or growing or whatever.
Sure. So average daycare, okay, for like dogs that weren't trained by us, or they get the structured play, they get the treadmill time, which is structured exercise, or we do pack walks in the summertime. And then there's rest time or break time in the kennel to decompress, right? With
Mhm.
dogs that have already trained with us, the other thing that they can do is duration work, which is like go here, don't move, right? So you'll see some dogs on placemats sometimes, and they'll be there for like
Yeah.
an hour or two throughout the day. And dogs are being trained in front of them. There's puppies playing. There's dogs on treadmills. There's dogs playing, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. So it's duration work plus distractions, right? So that's what we call mental exercise. So uh, again, for me growing up, like we used to go to church, and my mom would be like, "All right, we're gonna go to church. You have to behave yourself for the next hour." So I had to sit still, right? And as a kid, you want to move, you want to fidget and all that stuff. So it
Yeah.
was exhausting to try to behave myself. So it's the same thing for dogs. A lot of times they want to move and everything, or if they see distractions and stuff going on, mentally they have to have that impulse control. So it's a mental exercise versus the physical or excited type of exercise. We also just reinforce the training throughout the day. So of course, if he knows how to heel, the auto sits, more thresholds, but we're putting pressure behind it because now we have e-collar. We just also reinforce the training that he already has or that he is learning.
Okay. Cool. That's good to know.
Other questions?
I don't think so. Next steps. It sounds like we need to address like kind of like timing.
Oh, sure. So then,
Yeah.
you would decide, when if you want to start later or whatever, and you can always book a time in the future, which wouldn't be a bad idea because January and this month we've had a lot of consultations coming through,
Mhm.
Which is good because 2020 was shit.
Mhm.
But if you want to start in the future, you can let Maria know and say like, hey, I'd like to start like in April, blah 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 on a Saturday, and she'll skip ahead and then give you some times that'll be open then, and then you would pick your time and you can make your down payment or whatever, and then we would start at that date. Or if you wanted to start sooner, she would go over that with you. She'd ask for your schedule, and then look at my schedule and see where we line up, and then fit you in where she can get you.
Mhm.
And then we just get started. So it's really just personal preference if you want to push
Gotcha.
it or if you want to start sooner rather than later. I don't care, but definitely if you do want to start and you want to start later, my advice would be book your time in the
Okay. Now.
future, because if you come back later, you might have to wait even longer than because everything's booked out.
Got you. Okay. That's good to know. And then the program that I was looking at on the website was the daycare and train. So, but I mean, open to your suggestion on that. I thought that was a good fit for us.
So with the daycare and train, so there's pros and cons. And I always push people towards in person because you learn so much more, right? Okay. I don't touch the dog. I coach you through everything. I'm present with you. You're learning from ground zero, and you're training your dog. You're shaping everything, right? So you internalize it better, and everything's tied to you. You're doing all the work. Nothing's tied to us anymore, right? The con is it takes longer, or you got to go outside. With the daycare and train, we can achieve, for instance, what you would do in 6 weeks, we can achieve in 10 days. Okay. But the con is it's tied to us, and now we got to transfer it to you, but also you don't see as much, you don't see the mistakes, you don't see the really so much of the learning process, so you don't learn as much. Okay. So it's really personal preference. If you need the convenience of, like, I'm really busy and I don't have the time to commit or whatever, the daycare and train is your go-to. What we've been doing is, because I'm all about, because I think when I talk to people, their notion is when we train a dog to sit, the dog learns what sit is, and then when we say sit or anybody says sit, the dog just does it. I go, no. Yeah. Like, the dog associates what sit is, it's tied to us, and then we got to transfer it to you, right? So if you do, for instance, a 10-day daycare and training, we would teach the 6 commands: sit, stay down, come, place, heel, right? So we also teach more within the shorter time frame. And my trainer, Enrique, he's the one that pretty much does almost all the videos, is you would get a video of the first session of e-collar for every command. And we call it the explanatory session, right? So, like, let's say Elio happens to be a anxious dog, okay, that we're not aware of, and we put him under pressure, you're going to see the anxiety come out. The e-collar didn't make him anxious. It's just the e-collar is a stressor, and when put under stress, he becomes anxious, okay? So then, Enrique would explain that. He's like, oh, Elio's an anxious dog, and blah, 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 blah. And then this is how we work with an anxious dog. And you see him shaping everything, with the e-collar, the sit, the down, the stay, the come, the place, the heel, right? So when you watch it, it's kind of as if you were doing the training yourself, because you're seeing it happen for the first time, right? Because that's when the dog's going to have the most problems, is the first time. After he's been conditioned, it's going to be easy. Okay. So it gives you a feel for Elio, right, after his first run. And then if you're doing a 10-day, you're going to get a second video. And it's going to go what we call the overview. It's going to go over everything again. And then you would watch it, and then you would see the progress from that first week, that second. Okay?
That's cool. Yeah.
So if you did a 4-week program, you would get 4 videos at the end of each week, so that you can see the progress of Elio over time, to give you that picture of, like, oh, this is how it works. Because he's not a vehicle where you can just take it and say, hey, paint my car blue and replace the muffler, and you come back and you have that, concrete thing. There's going to be some things. So we have a daycare trained Shelby, who's a little golden doodle, and she's super flighty. She wants to run away when she's under stress all the time, right? So as soon as I saw that, I told them to slow down the program, because a dog like that needs more exposure and time to get over the flightiness, okay? Because they wanted to do 10 days straight. And as soon as I saw that, I said, no, we'll do the first 5, and we're going to disperse the rest over time, because it wouldn't be beneficial to you or the dog to try to compress it in a shorter time. Yeah. Okay. So something like that may pop up with Elio. We will let you know. Okay. Because we can't account for behavior until we start working with them. Like, I can look at a dog and think they're completely stable, and then as soon as I put them under stress, they're like nervous wrecks. So then we got to work on all that stuff. So yeah, it's really, do you want it sooner rather than later, or are you just too busy for it, even in the future? Or do you want to learn more and take the time and just postpone it a bit, and you'll definitely walk away with a greater wealth of knowledge if you do it yourself. I personally don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little torn with, you know, with COVID being such like an unknown factor and everything. Like I want to do this. That's not an inhibiting factor. But just for some health reasons, we've been trying to be pretty cautious about it. And that was kind of one of the reasons why a board and train felt like it's a great option. You guys do so much stuff. I don't know how y'all do so much. Like that's amazing. It's amazing, really.
The secret is, when I first opened the facility, we started with structure immediately. My concern was not, let's get to 80 dogs really fast.
Mm-hmm.
My concern was every dog that comes in here is going to be structure, 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 structure. So it was a lot of work in the beginning, a lot of educating my employees and all that stuff. But that's why I've had the same employees since I started, for the most part. Because most daycares, it's a revolving door. Because you get these that are like, oh, I love dogs. And then they get there and there's barking and just pissing all over the place, and like dogs with anxiety and like, you know, sitting on the floors and all that stuff. And then here it's structured, it's more work, but it makes it less work, you know? So, yeah, it's really personal preference on how you want to approach this. Again, I don't care what you do. And if you want an example, what I would do is go to our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Watch a lesson 1 of any dog, because on lesson 1 no one knows what they're doing, where it's in person. And then also go to like the board and train or the daycare and train playlist, click on it, and then click on any explanatory session video. Okay. And watch a little bit of that, okay? And then like Shelby would be a good explanatory session to watch because she's the flighty dog I was talking about, you know. And then you just kind of look at them and say like, okay, do I feel good with this, or do I feel like I want more of this one-on-one because I'm going to learn more? So,
gotcha. Okay. That's good advice.
And you can always push back your follow-up lessons, because you do get follow-up, of course, with your daycare and train and board and train. Mm-hmm. So like, let's say we give you the videos. Well, actually, yeah, that's actually potentially an option, is you could do the daycare and train, and we do the stuff, we give you the videos, and you just take from the videos and you start learning, right, during the winter time. And then come the spring, summertime, you can then schedule your follow-ups. You know?
Gotcha. And if I had questions, you guys are available to help answer those. Okay, cool. Okay.
We're always happy to help our clients. We get a lot of questions now because we're putting out so much content.
Yeah.
And I would love to help everybody, but it's like, if you want the answers, you can either watch our videos or just wait till we put it out. But if it's a client, we're always more than happy to, of course, help them out with any questions they may have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my biggest concern in the whole thing is just somehow not doing the e-collar correction stuff right and messing that up. Like that's, and I know it's like I need to just be exposed to the process and then just like mimic the process and just work through it. But,
yeah, and e-collar gives you actually a bit of gray area to make mistakes. Okay, so don't be too worried about that. So either way that you go, like if you did one-on-one, I would give you your homework and say, don't do anything else but this. And if you did the daycare and train, well, you'd have that video, right? Mm-hmm. Watch it, and you can always refer to it. And then if you're getting stuck, you can always ask us the question, and it's pretty straightforward. Once you understand the logic behind it, a lot of times when my clients email me, I just email them an answer, and it works.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Wonderful. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll put our heads together over here and figure out, what's best for the fam. And Maria, we can let Maria know.
Yeah, whenever you're ready. I'll let her know, and then she may follow up with you. Otherwise, whenever you figure out something, you just turn around and email her, and she'll get you all situated, okay?
Perfect. Yeah, awesome.
Well, we appreciate it. If you need anything else, you let us know. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll see Elio sometime in the future.
Yes, you will. Awesome.
Take care.
Bye.